we can go live here, and I will unpause us. Okay, so I am live with one of, I swear, my new favorite person. So Amanda Polick is with me. We met, what, a week ago, I'm going to say?
Yeah.
Okay, so a week ago, and then I dragged her into coming on with me doing a FaceTime Live. That is the problem when you meet me, Amanda. I might drag.
I love it. I'm so glad you dragged me.
I might drag you into something else. You never know. But Amanda and I met because I did a podcast with her, which will be coming up down the road. But we finished the podcast. I felt like kindred spirit. And I felt like I had a new friend. And I said to her, I need you to come do a FaceTime Live. One, we didn't have enough time. I thought I'd completely bore my podcast audience in the sense that it was going to get too long. And like, you know, only you and I would be listening at that point. I'd have to do like segments, but also because I really felt like I wanted to do a half hour of just really talking about what you do day to day, which is really helping people bring alive their ideas as a book coach. And so I want to say that I'm going to look down and really read your bio because although we're new friends, I haven't memorized your bio, sorry. But Amanda Polick is a book coach for food and entertainment professionals. She's currently based in Nashville, everybody, which I think like we could all agree there's some really good places to eat, and Nashville is definitely one of them. So we should talk about that. She's been featured in Cooking Light, Food and Wine, Time. There's a great story to her, how she all got started. I don't know, we should make people listen to the podcast. And she's a regular columnist with DIYMFA. Am I saying that all correctly? And so I'm just so happy that we're gonna talk today because I think like people come say like, oh, I have this idea, I want to write a book. I shared with you I was not one of those people.
Which is good to know. It's good to know what you don't want to do.
I think that was like really great that you said that to me. I was like, check off my list. Woo-hoo. But when it gets on my list, you know, I know where to go. But walk us through a little bit, you know, what you do. And I love, because I want to talk about what you don't do as well.
Yeah. So like you said, I focus on food and entertainment professionals because that's my background and I felt like I could serve that community the best. But so if someone does want to write a book,
and I think you got to know the whole world's out there going, good, we don't need to buy her book.
But it's important. Well, you know, and I said that too, just about it's good to know if you don't want to do something, because sometimes I think we get caught up in what other people are saying and we think that we also have to do that thing. And so it's just, it's such a good thing, like your intuition, you're like, I don't want to do that. Right. But so if someone, it feels like they are ready and like if they felt like I was a good fit for them, you know, just small little process stuff. We get on a call, you send me some materials, we figure out where you're at in the process, what your real goals are. Because you really do have to think about if you want to self-publish, if you want to, you know, send this to a literary agent, if this is just a personal project, and mapping those things out. And then, you know, I mostly get people who want to start from square one. They might have had an idea, maybe they've been writing in their head for years. I find that that's what a lot of people have. It's like this, oh, I've been telling friends and family for years, I'm going to write this book. So then I really like to take them back to like even before that, where it's like, we're just going to set up some mindset stuff, because that's kind of really what trips a lot of people up, is maybe thinking they have more time than they do. And, you know, even just like with their habits, processes, whatever. And also a lot of it too is like self-doubt. That's like one of the biggest things. Even if you are successful, have published stuff before, I find that that's the thing that we'll keep coming back around to. So now I've kind of pivoted to trying to address more of those things up front. So things will come up along the way in the process.
Well, it's probably true because there's a reason it's been in their mind and not on paper. Mm-hmm. Or even if it's been on paper, it's maybe squished up balls of paper, or even if it's in a journal, it hasn't made it into clear cut, moving forward. And I do think that this kind of endeavor, is huge. I mean, you get to the point where you say, I want to write a book, and you're going, maybe you're farther down the road, something mm-hmm. stops you. Well, there is something, whether it's too big or something says, well, okay, what if I really actually finish it? Mm-hmm. Then what? There's the business aspect of it, or whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, is it any good? What's it for? I mean, I deal as a publicist with a lot of authors who mm-hmm. have gone through the self-publishing and the big, publishing houses. Both are daunting, both are daunting even before you get to that process. Mm-hmm. So they set up what a 30-minute Zoom type of call with you, mm-hmm. To get to know you. I can assure you, people, that it would be a fun conversation. Amanda has an amazing personality. You have an actress background.
Entertaining.
You are entertaining. So you really, I think that brings something to it. You can really pull out of people what you're looking for. I mean, I think that's a little different, and that's what I really liked about you. Like, talk a little bit about that, because I think you can really pull out of people what may be holding them back too.
Yeah. So it's funny, you talk about my acting background, and I always, even as a performer, wanted to be a director, or wanted to, pull the magic out of people, because especially with writers, once I became an editor in college, and then, moved my career forward and ended up producing video and developing talent, the thing I saw across all of those is that people have stories, things that they are so good at, and they're just not connected to them. And they just need someone to point it out and not push them into something that's not their jam. Mm-hmm. And, I was actually teaching, I was doing a live coaching call for a private group last week, and there was this published author, and she said that she was writing a new project, and she had given it to a friend, and she said the feedback she gotten from this friend was just so defeating, because this friend was trying to push this book to be something she wanted and not what the writer wanted. And so I just pointed out that, with all of my stuff, and because I am a writer, but also I've worked with a lot of editors, I will always ask questions first, because your story better than I do. But, I feel like asking questions just gets at the root of where a block might be, where, you kind of get into this, a little bit of tunnel vision. It's very mm-hmm. hard to see outside of that stuff. So my thing is just to push and to guide you and to ask you questions, and not to tell you, this is how this should be. Like, this is how, this is going to be an effective story. It's really just to probe, and the feedback I constantly get, which, I don't think you always have to get positive feedback, right. But, I get, oh, I didn't, really see that. Oh, you're so right. And most of the time, though, as a writer, deep down when you get feedback that's well-meaning, intentional, guided, that, you already had some intuition that was going to be the case.
Yeah. And I think that what what that means is that the person wants to go there, they're open to it. They need that nudge. I mean, people need a nudge sometimes, or just their own validation of, am I on the right path? Like, it's just nervousness sometimes. I mean, it is a big process, even if that is like a book for their own family. Nobody, it's sad. Nobody wants to fail, and
No.
and they want the best to come out of them.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, people, we need coaches. I mean, people forget, you don't run a football down a field without a coach helping you, and I think, like, it's really interesting. People should use business coach, they should use business coaches. They should use writing coaches. They should, people need help,
There's a great TED Talk on that.
Oh.
And I can't think of, but it's,
oh my God, really?
I think it's
want
like
to find
why
that.
everyone needs a coach. And I believe it was a doctor talking about, but I think he was working in, it was either like Central America or Haiti or something, but they were, he implemented this whole thing where they were coaching nurses down there and just talking about the importance across all professions of having a coach. And to your point about it being so big, like, that's also a thing I get with clients where they're like, no one teaches you actually how to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went to college for English, creative writing. Yeah. We were never taught, like, actually how to work through the entire process. So that's also a thing of, continuously, gaining this trust with my clients again and again of, don't worry, like, we will get there. I will guide you. You don't have to manage the project. That's why you hired me. But I think too, when it's a story that you're writing, you want an element of control of, I know exactly the next piece is, but there's always a part in any process where you're kind of in the middle. You're like, I have no idea. And that's what you have hope for.
Yeah. What do you find people make the most mistakes on? I mean, like, where are they making mistakes? I mean, I hate to point a finger.
I find that most people don't know what a story is.
Oh, okay.
And I say that as more of, so I work with a lot of people who are writing memoir, which memoir, it's not an autobiography. It's normally, some small, very pointed part of your life. There's some major takeaway, and there's so many beautiful memoirs, but people will kind of glom on to maybe like celebrity memoirs and think that because they talk about their childhood throughout this whole thing, that's what they should also do. But the story part, it's kind of an interesting thing because it goes back to this kind of age-old thing of show, don't tell, which you hear in a lot of writing classes, and people don't really know what that means so much. So, to do a non-literary example, I'm in Nashville, so we have a lot of country music here. I grew up on country amongst other things, but what I really love about country music is it is all about story. Mm-hmm. It is painting a picture flat out. I think that's also why they make some really great music videos, because everything is already set up there. But you're in the scene. It's not them saying, oh, I just really love this woman and she broke my heart. Like, you're seeing her storm out, him running after her, or, whatever it is. Like, you're really able to live in that moment. So even if it is nonfiction, you have to have some of those stories. You need to be able to feel it. Another example, and I wrote this blog post about show, don't tell, and like a lesson from Johnny Cash. And you can tell these stories in so many different ways. Dialogue is a really great way to do that. But one of my favorite quotes from him, it was in an interview, and someone asked what his idea of paradise was. And his answer was, this morning with her having coffee. And he's talking about his wife, June Carter Cash. And so you know, that shows you too, like,
it's very visual.
yes,
It becomes very visual.
It's what all of these things reveal about your characters and what really motivates them. And, you know, if you're writing a memoir or even, you know, a self-help, like most likely you're in there, you have to make a change. Like there's some internal change that's happening. And I just love that quote so much, because you could have put it with a different character and they could have said, oh, you know, a deserted island, and, you know, I have a stockpile of, I don't know, like whiskey, right, and, you know, whatever it is. And that's a totally different thing. So the telling just really comes from, in some ways, I think, not trusting that, you know, the audience can really like live in this thing. It's like, I need to tell you exactly what you're supposed to feel, exactly whatever. But I think when you read any kind of, if it's fiction, whatever, like there are stories in everything. That's what we connect to. And so that's what I really kind of have to shift my clients more towards, of like, I say this constantly and I'm sure they're like, okay, I know you keep saying this, but I'm like, oh, I want to live in this moment. Let's be here longer. Let's linger. What does the air smell like? What did this feel like? Even if it's a memoir, if there's, you know, let's say you had an instance where you had an argument with a business partner or something. Well, what did that look like? You know, even if you're angry with someone, that could be a million different things. That could be you just, you know, sending them straight to voicemail, you sending a passive aggressive email, you know, storming out. Like, let us live it so we can, you know, fully experience that and go on that journey.
I love that. You slid really into one of my next questions, which was advice that you give people, but you also, you know, hitting on the Johnny Cash. I think, you know, people get annoyed with me daily that Bruce Springsteen is one of my live and die for. And it's because he's a storyteller. I mean, his music is all about storytelling, and people often will say to me, you know, why do you like Bruce Springsteen? And it's because I love a good story. And I have found that that's what his music is all about. It's about storytelling. It's about the story. It's about the characters. It's you know, long before MTV and videos, you know, a good sustaining lyric or music, you know, with music, if the story was there, the music, you know, that's what stayed. Or, you know, but that's the same thing with a book. When you read a book, it's your visuals that, you know, someone paints a picture, you know, of the character. Well, they paint the picture, and if they paint it well, it's what you see. It's not, you know, it isn't until a movie is made that they put an actress, you know, right. You know, it's a beautiful blonde on the beach. Okay, well, you know, Hollywood gives that beautiful blonde the face because now, but long before, you might have had 6 blondes in your mind, or brunettes, or whatever it was. But, you know, it's up to the artistry of your own mind and the person writing the lyric, writing the words. So, but I mean, I love that advice that you're saying, you know, stay in that moment a little bit longer, give a little more detail. And it's funny, when I used to produce videos, I would often say to my editor, you get a little annoyed with me, I'd say, give it a little more breath. Like, back off a little bit. Like, if somebody was talking and we need, I'd say, give it a little more space. And it was just let it breathe a little bit more. And that's sort of what you do in video, and sort of what you're saying on the pages is, you know, give it more breath, give it more life.
Yeah, and it's funny because I tell people to slow down, you know, like sometimes I'm like, not so fast, because they just want to skip over something. And it's like, you might understand what something means, but someone else might not. And, you know, if you think about any book, I don't care if it's, you know, on productivity, self-help, whatever it is, you're reading for a purpose with intention. And most often, like, yes, it's great. It's a great compliment when someone's like totally read it in one sitting, whatever. But that time in that one sitting, if that's what it is, you want someone to be like, okay, this is just such a sense of relief. Oh, let's do this. Or, you know, they see they have 10 more pages, you know, before they finish. They're like,
I hate that. I hate when I have 10 more. I hate when I have 10 more pages, because it means like at that 10 more pages, I probably am stopping to, like, you know, make it last longer, or, you know, or Googling, did that author write anything else? Then I'm okay, you know, or something along those lines.
Oh, I love that.
I know. So of the things, I want to talk a little bit about you. We'll tease the podcast a little bit.
Yeah.
You've written for, you know, numerous magazines and things like that. How do you know, when you're writing for a magazine, are you describing the food, or, you know, what are you writing about, and what do you love to write about in that genre?
So when I worked at Cooking Light and Time Inc., I got to write across quite a few brands. But the funny thing is that, like, you know, there's a lot of food writers who went to culinary school and were actual food bloggers. And that's not my story at all. I grew up in Northern California, 30 minutes outside of wine country, like, you know, actual farms, like on back roads, which people don't think of California so much as. But I loved it, but I connected really early on to this idea that we're all really telling the same stories for so many of these things. And one of the things I really loved with a lot of the stories I was telling, but, like, you know, if it was a chef or, you know, a restaurant, whatever, they're all business owners, entrepreneurs. There's this thing that, you know, they believe in, they're working so hard on, they're so incredibly passionate about it. They want to share it with other people. They want it to transform other people's experiences, lives, etc. So I think I glommed on more to that necessarily. And, you know, as far as like with the food, it's so easy. I actually had a conversation with someone recently of just how food is so tempting because it's so nostalgic. And so that's another thing that I have to, you know, tell my clients. I'm like, I know your grandmother's recipe was so important to you, but what does it mean to the other stuff? So that's
right.
You know, so even when I'm, you know, writing anything, it's always like, what is this supposed to mean? So, you know, if it's a,
and that's,
you know, even
super true. Like, food taps into, I heard Jerry Seinfeld say the other day, he's like, he was being interviewed, and somebody asked him, why do you talk about food so much? And he said, well, let's face it, I'm Jewish. Food is easy to talk about, and Jews have the worst food. And I thought, oh my God. And he's like, it's so easy, but it's like, I was in the car, I'm like about to get in an accident, but I thought to myself, like, it's so funny, because then the person he was being interviewed by went, oh yeah, matzo ball soup, kugel. And then, like, they were naming all the food that looks like, you know, cardboard and all these things. But, you know, you bring up you immediately have these visuals and everything like that. So, you know, the truth is that when you're writing about 4th of July, and you can talk about all these memories of food and things that we visually want to see, and really kind of go deep into our, you know, lemonade doesn't just have to be lemonade, and desserts, certain blueberry pie doesn't have to be, you know, blueberry pie, or you wouldn't have a job for Cooking Light. I mean,
no, I mean, it's funny too. Like, I have a client working on a memoir with recipes right now, and that's probably one of the hardest things too. Of like, memoir is hard in and of itself. because as much as you love your story, or people might want to hear your story at a party, it's just different to put it into a book form. And so then coupled with recipes, you know, it's a little bit harder to like kind of take some of that nostalgia away, or that I call it preciousness. You know, we get so precious about these things that we love. But, you know, my piece of advice always is just like, what is the transformation that this thing had for you? Overall, your story, it has to have, you know, an opening and like a question, something you're doubting, something you want, something you need, whatever. And then there's a resolution at the end. I think romantic comedies are such a great example of this, just because, like, you know, a Hallmark movie, the first 5 minutes, you know, she gonna lose her family farm. She has to go to the city to get this loan. She meets this guy. Like, you know what the stakes are.
Right. As my husband says, he barely has eaten 3 pieces of popcorn and he knows the ending. He's like, why are we here? And, oh yeah, you picked the movie.
but people still want to watch, because
of course they do. Do you find as a writing coach the pressure of making sure they're successful in their endeavor? And I mean that, like, I know you do, but that, like, that it's going to appeal to everybody. I mean, memoirs are hard, like you said. Like, why do I care what this person, like, why do I care that their grandmother's recipe is great? Like, do you feel that pressure? I mean,
no,
I'm throwing you under the bus. I do that. I was much nicer in the podcast, but I mean, isn't that pressure? I mean,
for sure.
Yeah.
But I try and be really open and honest that, you know, I can't control any outside factors. So sometimes I'll have someone reach out, you know, and I turn people down just because I think maybe their expectations aren't realistic. You know, writing a book is a really long process. I tell people all the time, like, I know people who signed, you know, book deals and their book wasn't published for 7 years. You know, this is something, and so that's like where the mindset stuff comes in the beginning. You know, I ask, you know, a question of like, if you're still writing this book in 4 years, is it worth it? And if it's not, then, you know, if this is really not something that you think you can sustain for a long time, you know, find something else. I would be the first person to say, please don't spend your money on this if you feel like it's going to make you more frustrated, because I can't guarantee anything. I can only do my part of showing up, helping you get to a book that people will want to read. But, you know, memoir is actually something that a lot of people want to write, and until they start writing,
like, you know, and I think, like, the fact that you just said that part of your initial conversation is expectations, because I think that should be a part of anyone's first meeting. It's a part of my first meeting for sure, in PR and in marketing. It's a part of, for sure, when I talk to an author. I've talked to so many authors who have worked with big publishing houses, and the rhythm of that and what happens after what I call opening day. Publishing houses often work with someone and then they move on. And then they come sort of to me and they're like, well, my publishing house only did X amount. I'm like, yeah, it's like Top Gun, you know, it's opening weekend and they've moved on. And that's not to belittle the publishing house by any means, but you're done. Your book is still on the shelf, but you know, if you want to keep having PR, they're not going to keep you going. And you know, books themselves have, you know, the industry alone has changed, obviously. And COVID itself, you know, I'm working with authors right now. They're not out in bookstores. Bookstores are a dime a dozen. And bookstores, how you sell your book right now is very different. So I think, like, people writing their books, it's an amazing thing to do, but they also have to know when they go into the process, how they're going to market, and that's honestly, that's just true of the film industry too right now. I mean, everything. So,
and people don't think about that, like, especially
you have to think I think you have to think the end result to start the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why too, a lot of it, what I ask in the beginning is like, I mean, who would you even sell this to? Who, you have to think about your target market, your audience, all of that stuff. And that's actually one of the biggest reasons why agents don't pick up a book, is because you don't have an author platform, because a lot of authors just assume that, oh, I have this really great idea and the publisher, the agent is going to champion this and I'm going to be a New York Times bestseller. And, if you...
My favorite line, my favorite line, and I'm going to go on the Today Show. And I'm like, really? Give me a call. And, because, what people don't realize is the Today Show doesn't have a book producer anymore. I mean, like, people have to realize what has changed in the industry. And that's why, I try so hard to mantra surround yourself with experts like you. When you're starting a process, like, that is worth your money. If you're going to do something, decide, like, sit down and, on a Sunday with a cup of coffee and say, I want to do this. Now, what is it going to take? I'm in it for the long haul. But like you said, if you're not in it for the long haul, then it's a really wonderful experience to go through. I'm not saying don't do it for your, if it's do it for your family, have it. But if you're in it to, really be in it, then surround yourself with the experts who can really take you and help you and devise a plan. And you're certainly, like I said, when I met you, I was blown away. We haven't mentioned it, and I certainly will post it. But it's to really take a look at Amanda's process. It's Amanda at amandapolick.com. And that's, when you look at her website, there is lots of amazing blogs. I had the best time reading your blogs. I went through a whole bunch of them. They were just so much of your personality comes through, but also how and what your process is. I have met many coaches along the way. But I guess, like I said, you and I mix well. So I guess if I ever were to write a book, you'd be my person. But, and I think that's important. You have to connect with someone.
If someone's not your speed, or, I'm
not sure what would we get done. We'd probably end up talking too much.
I'm bringing back around. I can keep us on, but no, I mean, my thing too is that, and I think you'll appreciate this just coming from the production world, but on set, some people would, because I was the segment producer for Facebook Live for Timing. So I had 4 brands that I was managing along with other brands. And so I had a tight schedule. So if I had someone coming in, like, I'm running them through things. But,
okay, so she's kicking me out already. She's already telling me, like, that's it.
No, but it's true. The thing is that I don't want you to think you're working. Right. So especially with that, I'm like, my demeanor is calm. I know what I'm doing, and I'm on task. But I don't need you worrying about anything. So a lot of people would get like thrown off, even people in production. They're like, oh, we have to have this like frantic energy. We have to be moving to this thing. I'm like, you need to take a breath. Right. I have not spent all of these hours doing this other stuff to the day be running around crazy.
It's true. It's funny you get this because I used to produce a lot of live shows, and if you do all the work ahead of time and you are really tight on all your pre-production, like I used to walk in for an 8-hour live show and I would sit down and people are like, aren't you like, and I'd have this big binder and I had like the best director, yay, you know, and like great crew. And I would sit down and I'd be like, okay. And, you know, there was nothing at that point I could do. I mean, it was going to rock and roll. But the truth is that I made myself nuts beforehand. Like I had done all the pre-production. I had been frantic or been on task and everything, that once you're live and, you know, it is just calm and you're just, you know, got to go. And you got to know that you're, you know, that you've got these things. And I kind of try and do that now too, as you do, like when you're coaching, like you've got your systems. And I think systems are really important. That I also think I shared with you, you know, today, as my client knows, she was on live and TV this morning and something happened. And, you know, the world went on. It's okay. I mean, I wasn't happy. It happens. And we're in a crazy world right now. And I always feel like I have 5 things that would make me go off the deep end. That's not one of them, you know, like.
That's so good.
You know, like you know, so, you know, right now we're in a tough world and I just want to keep my smile going. So like, you know, monitors freezing or like, as you and I were about to go on, I'm like, oh, let's see if it works today, you know?
I mean, listen, I had an improv teacher tell me like after a really bad show, he's like, listen, it could always be better. It could always be worse. And I think that, you know, with some of that, like, so that's why I just feel like I felt like we were kindreds already, but just because too, you know, it's like, what are you going to do?
I think the day I did the podcast with you was like, when I got on and I was like, I don't even know you. And I'm having like the world's worst day. And I think afterwards I like sent you a message going, okay, that just made my day. I just am in the best mood. And I know like we did. And I'm so glad. You know, I told you I have family that goes to Nashville, so I'm coming down with them.
We'll go eat.
Yeah. I got to go diet first. That's how I feel lately, but I will go eat with you. We might have a cocktail.
Well, winter is coming, so, you know, it doesn't
really. Sweater weather can hide. But Amanda, I know you're busy. I know what your day is like. So we will definitely converse over email. Keep in touch. I'm so glad.
Thank you so much.
Well, this is the first thing I dragged you into. There'll be more.
Love it. Keep dragging me.
All right. I miss you already. I will talk to you soon.
Yes.
All right. And I'm posting this, so repost it.
Oh, for sure. I'm sharing it.
All right. Talk to you later, honey.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye.
Bye.